In this video I'm going to show you how to properly design a lifting plan for wrestling and things you will need to keep in mind. And unless you're an Olympic athlete, you probably don't have a team of strength and conditioning coaches planning everything for you, so you have to take matters into your own hands, for now at least. I would really recommend you to watch the whole video without skipping forward, and some of you might disagree with some of the theories that I discuss, and I expect that, because many of the things I discuss here might contradict what you have previously learned. Just so you know, I simply want this video to function as a thought experiment for you, and if you get any new ideas that you can implement from this video, that's a success story for me. So to begin, strength and conditioning for wrestling can be very complex compared to other sports, and there are several reasons for this. In wrestling you have to be the complete athlete. It's very different from other sports because you can't focus on strength only, because then you will lack the endurance and you'll burn yourself out in a wrestling match. And if you only focus on endurance and do no strength work, then you will lack the strength and you'll get overpowered by a stronger opponent. So you really need to have everything in check. Then we have the training sessions themselves. Wrestling is one of few sports where the practice sessions are a rigorous workout in itself. When you go to a wrestling practice, when you practice, it already is a strength and conditioning workout because of the intense nature. Just think about it. Then we have the rest periods in wrestling. The rest is shorter than the period itself, so we have a negative rest to work ratio, and this can make things even trickier. Usually it's the other way around in other sports. And finally, we have the weight requirements, the freaking weight cutting. Many athletes will do their weight cutting through even more intense exercise and dehydration instead of a proper diet, and this can really interfere with your strength and conditioning program. So those are some crucial points that we have to keep in mind before even thinking about designing a strength and conditioning program. But there are things we can do about this, of course, and we will discuss them later in this video. But before I continue, we need to acknowledge something. Strength and conditioning is merely a supplement to wrestling. It's not a good idea to sacrifice wrestling sessions for lifting, because technique is fundamental. You always need to prioritize technique. Without proper use of your wrestling technique, all strength and endurance in the world will mean nothing. Think about it. So if you're going to your practices like you're supposed to and you're already working on perfecting your techniques over and over again, then and only then strength and conditioning might be a winning edge. And there are high-level wrestlers who don't even do strength and conditioning at all. They only rely on technical superiority, but then on the flip side we have high-level wrestlers who do a lot of strength and conditioning, so you have to think for yourself here. I've made this video in such a way that you're supposed to think for yourself and realize things, and if you get any new ideas that you can implement from this video, please write them down so you don't forget them. So, before we design a lifting program, we need to analyze how a wrestling competition works and what we're preparing ourselves for. I've made this video based on freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling and their format, but it can easily be applied to collegiate or folk style wrestling as well. In freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling, the format is 2-3 minute sessions for each match, and you can have up to 5 or 6 matches in a single tournament. You're not allowed to remain inactive during a match, because then you will get a passivity warning, so you're in constant activity that's very intense. And you are using short and powerful bursts, sometimes to a maximal level, depending on the situation. This means that your body will use all of the 3 energy systems. First we have the ATP PC system, and as you can see it doesn't last very long, only for a couple of seconds. This can be compared to a 100-meter sprint with maximal effort, and this system uses creatine phosphate for fuel, which is also the reason why creatine is taken as supplements. This system is activated during powerful and max effort movements, and it costs a lot of energy. So you would only use this system when you're going for a fast and powerful takedown with maximal effort when it comes to wrestling. When you use this system to its fullest extent, you will need 3 minutes to recover from it. So if you were to go all out in a wrestling match, using maximal effort for 10 seconds, then as I said, you will need 3 minutes to recover. So only go all out when you have to. Let's say you're under score and it's 10 seconds left in the match, then it will be wise to go all out, of course. And you will train this system by doing heavy strength training with few repetitions and long rest periods, similar to powerlifting. For example, 3 sets of 3 repetitions on the deadlift at an intensity of 90% of your 1 rep maximum with 3 minutes of rest. Another example of a scenario is running 100 meters as fast as you possibly can, like I explained earlier. Any near max or max effort activity basically uses and trains this system. It's the most powerful system in your body, but it doesn't last very long. Then we have the anaerobic glycolytic system. This is the second most powerful system in your body, and we use this one predominantly in a wrestling match, and it comes right after you use your most powerful ATPC system that we talked about earlier. This one lasts longer but is not as powerful, but there is still a high amount. This system uses mainly glucose as the energy source, so basically any carbohydrates that you eat, and it can be compared to 200 to 800 meter sprint. Basically any high effort task in a period of 15 to 120 seconds uses this system. You will train this one by doing high repetition strength training, for example. Let's say 3 sets of 10 repetitions with 2 minutes rest, or various interval trainings, circuits like 45 seconds activity, 15 seconds rest, Tabatas, and things of that nature. It can be seen as strength endurance. It's strength mixed with endurance, not the other one only. And finally we have the aerobic system, which is the least powerful system in your body. This one is active at all times and it recovers very fast, but it's not powerful. Any moderately demanding activity that lasts longer than 3 minutes uses this system, so a 10 minutes run, a 5k, a 10k, a marathon and so forth. Our task as wrestlers is to train all of those 3 systems that we discussed appropriately, because they are all required at different times. When it comes to the ATP PC system, we need to have high power output for critical moments. We need the anaerobic system to make powerful movements for longer periods, and we finally have to have a good aerobic system to withstand all wrestling rounds in the same day. In other words, we need to do strength training, we need strength endurance training, and we need endurance training itself. So all of those 3 systems are important for a wrestler and they should all be worked on, but which one is to be prioritized when designing a program? This completely depends on your style of wrestling. Are you this pushy endurance wrestler who likes to drown your opponent, or are you this defensive wrestler who waits for the right moment and then run through your opponent like a bulldozer, utilizing a lot of strength and power? Perhaps you are a mix of both. There are pros and cons to each type, but for the purpose of this video I'm only going to discuss the designing itself, not wrestling strategy. I'll leave that to you. But there are some fundamentals that you need to know. Before you begin any strength and conditioning program, you need to have 3 things checked. And this might be conventional knowledge for most of you, but it's good to remind yourself. That is sleep, diet, and constant technique improvement. This is non-negotiable, it's mandatory. If you lack any of those areas, you will either stall your improvement, you won't improve at all, or you'll get injured sooner or later. I can tell you that by experience. Your improvement is made when you sleep, and this should be obvious. Get 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night. And this might be me, but I honestly believe that there's some kind of sleep shaming going on in the modern society. You're perceived as this lazy bum for sleeping, and you're supposedly this brave warrior by going through sleepless nights and staying on the grind, as they describe it. Don't be ashamed for sleeping. Think about the lions. They sleep 20 hours a day to be fit to fight, and they're the king of the jungle. When it comes to the diet, keep things simple. Carbs before training and a lot of protein for the rest of the day. Conventional knowledge says 2 grams of protein for every kilogram of body weight. that works. You don't need to complicate it more than that. And basically all vegetables are beneficial, especially the cauliflower types. That's all you need to know. Include them whenever you can. When it comes to supplements, you should take the vitamins and minerals that you need. Usually it's vitamin D if you live in an area that has lack of sunlight. You have B12 and omega-3. It varies based on who you are and where you live, so you need to find out what you need. I take creatine also because it's fuel for explosive bursts like we talked about earlier. And I like to use unflavored protein powder. It does taste like crap, but I don't like artificial sweeteners or a bunch of E456 or whatever. And always work on your technique. Everywhere. In the gym, in the wrestling club, and in life in general. When you're doing a deadlift, you shouldn't hear something crack like a dry tree branch. That's a red light. Record yourself with your phone, analyze, see how the pros do it. Do this every time, ask for feedback, do all of those things. Our goal is to perform exercises that translate into wrestling. Ask yourself, what do you do in a wrestling match? You pull, you lift, you extend your hips, you push, you need back strength. You need leg strength, you need speed, so everything in the gym has to be beneficial to all those areas. Let's say you want to do some cardio. Now why the hell would you do that on a stationary bike? There is zero transferability in that into wrestling. Remember, the goal is to improve your cardio, so would it not be better to hit the ropes, use the agility ladder, or do some shoots and sprawls in high tempo? Then you will get good footwork and good motoric skills. It's wrestling specific, and you still train your cardiovascular system. It's 2 birds in 1 stone. I mean, last time I checked, you don't ride a freaking bicycle in a wrestling match, do you? And why do cardio in a moderate tempo for 2 hours straight? You're not training for a marathon, you're training for wrestling. You're never going to wrestle in this tempo, so why train for it? Is it not better to divide your cardio in intensive short intervals that's actually similar to a wrestling match? The thing is, the muscle fibers in your body are limited to specific demands. This makes it kind of a scarcity. This means that if you do too much moderate tempo exercises like you do in a low pace 2 hours bicycle workout, you are sacrificing your fast twitch muscle fibers for that. And in contrast to that, if you only do strength training and nothing else, you're sacrificing your endurance muscle fibers and you'll gas out fast. So you need to find the perfect balance. When it comes to strength and power training, do power cleans to train your hip extension, similar to the drive of a double leg takedown. Do squats to train your leg strength. Everything has its purpose. And squats will make it harder to take you down. Do rowing exercises to benefit your pulling strength when going for single legs. Do pull-ups so that you can do better snap downs. Basically every wrestling move can be improved through strength training. But it has to be the correct selections. As wrestlers, this is very important. Always leave some energy in the bank. And what do I mean by that? It means that you need to have a systematic approach to strength training. Energy is a scarcity. If you are already wrestling 4 to 5 times a week and then on top of that go all out on every strength training session, you will burn yourself out and break down your body. I can tell you that by experience. Remember, you're simply doing this to develop strength. You're not a power lifter. Strength training is a supplement to wrestling. So let's say you're certain that you can lift 3 sets of 3 repetitions of a 200 kilogram deadlift. Then I would do 195, because then you will be fresh for the next training session. Even though you're 100% that you can make it. You need to increase your weights very gradually. That way you're gradually climbing this ever expanding ladder without actually hitting the ceiling, because you don't allow it to happen. As a rule of thumb, you can think of it like this. If you struggle very hard on every repetition, it's probably too heavy. Once again, even though you can make it 100%, you need to take it slowly. You need to continue on a weight until it becomes smooth before you increase it. Stick to your plan for the day. Avoid the temptation of doing more. Don't completely empty your batteries every session. This feel of when to increase weight is an intuition. It can only come from experience. And yes, most probably in the first sessions you will experience some sort of overtraining or a overtrained central nervous system. It's very common, but you will learn by experience. And this is probably one of the hardest things you can do as a wrestler. A wrestler's mentality is that you always have to go all out in everything that you do. And that is need either the weight room or life in general, and that's amazing. I really respect that. There is nothing wrong with hard work. I preach hard work. But in the weight room it's something different. It's crucial that you have a systematic approach. That is the hard work. Think of your energy in the gym as a bank account. You need to be mindful of how much you spend and leave some for another day. Don't spend more than you make. Like if you go on a shopping spree every day, you'll have fun for a couple of days, but eventually debt will bite your ass and you won't have shit left. And it's gonna take a while to recover from it. Speaking of recovery, it's time for the most boring and probably one of the hardest things you can do, I promise you. This is probably tougher than all of those heavy strength training sessions. It's deloading. And the reason why it's tough is because it's so boring. It goes against everything you stand for. And this is something you introduce when you notice your body is overtrained. Sometimes it's after 4 weeks or 5 or even 10, it depends. Trust me, you will know exactly when this happens. Your head will feel like it's 10 times heavier, you'll feel like you're being abducted by aliens or something. Previously easy weights will now feel like an elephant. It's time to recover basically. And contrary to popular belief, you don't always have to deload for a whole week. Sometimes 2 or 3 days is enough. And there are many ways you can do this. Number 1. You can continue on with your regular weights but only do half of the sets or even a third. Or you can lower the repetitions. It depends on how overworked you are. Number 2, continue with the full sets but decrease the weights by around 40 to 50% of what you normally do. And the last option is to just do something different. Go do some yoga, ice fishing, sightseeing, do some light accessory lifting like curls, presses, core and stuff, jumping ropes. Just take it easy, do moderate activity. And whatever you do, please don't keep training heavy. I know, it's so boring. It's like you're this kid at a candy store eating a bunch of chocolate candy and ice cream and stuff, and then suddenly you're taken into this vegetable store where you eat broccoli and cauliflower. That's what deload is. Just hang on, you'll be good, I promise. Then we have range of motion. Simply put, use the whole movement on the given exercise. When you're doing a squat, you shouldn't be asking how low you should go. You should go down until there is a stop and then you go up. That's a full repetition. When you do a pull-up, you go down until there is a stop and then you go up completely. Partial repetitions are both dangerous and very counterproductive to wrestling and sports in general. You see, when you squat to the absolute bottom, you're not only developing strength, but you're stretching as well, which means you're going to improve your mobility. And as we all know, mobility is freaking vital to a wrestler. Once again, 2 birds in 1 stone. And then on top of that, you're putting your body in awkward positions and making your body used to those, which means you're training your body to prevent injury as well. But with that said, still be aware of your body's limitations. This is a gradual process. Don't force your body if it's not ready yet. You develop mobility by repetition, gradually. When you squat to the bottom, for example, you're hyperextending your ankles and strengthening them at that position. So if you have done this for a long time and your body is getting used to it in the weight room, and then you go to a wrestling match, your body will be prepared for that extension in case it happens during a takedown attempt, for example. And then you would have prevented a 2 years injury layoff due to a torn Achilles tendon, because you have stretched that part and it can withstand those hyperextensions that inevitably happen in a match sometime. That is the power of range of motion by doing full repetitions. And this is one of the most effective and important things you can do, and it's often neglected. Keep a training log or a diary. Before you enter the gym, you should know exactly what to do already. It has already been planned beforehand. Enter your goals that you want to achieve for the day. Every time you write down your goals, your subconscious mind will pick up on opportunities that will fulfill those. I know this sounds very cliche, like something you hear in every single self-help book, but seriously, it does work. It's very powerful. And also when you write down your gym activity, you will start seeing patterns. How much have I improved this month? How much more weight am I lifting now compared to before? Why am I not improving? Do I need to change something? It's like this graph of your progress. It's very effective. And now, finally, let's start to talk about the structure of the program, the order of which you should do things. Let's start with the strength training day. This is how it will look like. We will begin all sessions with a dynamic warm-up. Get all your joints loose and warm actively like you do before a wrestling practice. Arm circles, hip rotations, leg swings, body weight squats. Get your blood flowing. When your body is cold, it's more susceptible to injury. It's very important to warm up. You should basically warm up every body part that you're going to use that day. Generally, you should always begin your strength training sessions with the fast and explosive exercises, or the power exercises that they're also known as. Because those are the ones that require the most mental fuel and focus. You will not be able to produce fast movements at the end of a training session because your brain will be tired by then. Speed is a mental game, and you need to do your explosive exercises with full focus and intention in order for them to be effective. Speed is developed very slowly and it requires a lot of focus. Keep in mind that power is different from strength. Power means force times velocity, while strength is force only. Explosive exercises include Olympic lifts, which are the clean and jerk, the snatch, the power cleans. Those are the lifts that you see on the Olympic Games. You know, those guys who throw these big bars over their head. Then we have plyometrics, which consists of various jumping movements, and ballistic training, or medicine ball throws. Those are light, non-bouncing balls that you throw either against a wall or the floor. Olympic lifts will improve your strength and speed at the same time, while plyometrics and ballistic training or medicine ball throws will translate all your heavy lifting done in the gym into usable speed. They can be seen as a gateway to speed. If there is one exercise out of the Olympic lifts that I would really recommend you to learn and practice, it is the power clean. This is an excellent exercise because almost all wrestling throws include an extension of the hips. And by mastering this technique, the power clean, and getting stronger from it, you will improve your hip extension and improve the drive of your takedowns. Basically, your whole body will become explosive and you'll develop drive. And the power clean is not to be confused with the regular clean. Those are two different movements. The power clean is generally easier to learn and is better suited for explosive power development for athletes. Let me tell you one thing when it comes to power. If you have to do an action more powerfully from now on, whether that is a takedown attempt, a deadlift, a squat, a sprawl, whatever you want, if you want it to become stronger, always think in terms of speed and not strength. Science says when you do something with the intention of speed, you naturally recruit more motor units and the action becomes more powerful. When you're doing a deadlift, think of it like this. I need to lift this weight up and lock out in the shortest amount of time possible, as opposed to I need to lift this with strength. Or tell yourself, I need to do this double leg as fast as possible. This might sound simple, but trust me, there is a lot of power in this mind trick. You will develop more power than you ever thought possible. Speed is one of the greatest assets you can have, because the only way to counter speed is to have higher speed yourself. If you look at the pros in any sport, they usually have superior speed to their opponents. Basically, you can develop explosiveness or speed by doing any movement if you have the intention of doing them fast. Speed is developed very gradually, so you have to make this a habit. And those exercises that I mentioned above are particularly effective because they force you to be fast, otherwise they won't work. When working on explosive exercises or speed exercises, you should stick to 1 to 5 repetitions every set and do them as explosively as you can. If you do more than 5, you'll lose the quality and it won't be as beneficial. Every repetition needs explosive intentions in order for them to be effective when you're training power. You're essentially training your brain to produce fast movements by using your body's fastest muscle fibers, and those are called the type 2X. The only way you can get to those fibers is through intention, so everything begins in your brain. Since you're doing this, you're also using the ATP-PC system that we talked about earlier, so you'll need to rest about 3 minutes between sets to recover when doing speed exercises. Right after you're done with your speed exercises, you go over to the strength exercises, and those are the compound lifts. They could be seen as the main thing you do for the session, and those include the deadlift variations. We have the conventional deadlift, the trap bar deadlift, and the sumo deadlift. We have the squat variations, the high bar back squat, the low bar back squat, the front squat. Some wrestlers even perform a variation called the Zercher squat. Supposedly it has great carryover to wrestling because of its similarity to a takedown, but I would be careful doing this exercise if you're new. And then finally we have the pressing variations, which includes the bench press, the military press, and the push press. Those are the compound lifts, and anything that works multiple muscles simultaneously is regarded as a compound exercise. If you want to develop strength, you should stick to 1 to 5 repetitions every set here also. You can do heavy repetitions of 3x3, 3x5, 5x5, 5x2. There are many solutions, and the intensity that you would use for strength training is anywhere from 70 to 90% of your 1 rep maximum, and sometimes even more. It depends on many things, your experience, your ability to recover, how many sets and repetitions you're doing, and so on. If you want to build muscle mass and gain weight, say you're moving up to a weight class, you could do hypertrophy style training on the compound lifts. Then you would do 6 to 12 repetitions every set. But you'd also have to eat more than usual, of course. You won't just magically get bigger by lifting. High repetitions and shorter rest periods on the compound lifts can also be used to develop strength endurance. And after you're finished with your main compound lift, you should include a pulling exercise. This will give you pulling strength, which is beneficial to wrestling, but also develop your posterior muscles that are easily neglected. If you have underdeveloped posterior muscles and overdeveloped anterior muscles, you'll risk injury because there will be an imbalance. You can choose to include a bent over row or a vertical pulling exercise like the pull-ups, chin-ups, with weights if you can, or just the lat pull-down machine. Here you can do 6 to 12 repetitions each set. And finally, after the compound exercises and the rowing, we'll end with some accessory lifts, as they're known as. Those are exercises that target specific muscles, and they're good for joint health and injury prevention. You can do Romanian deadlifts, you can do lunges, one-legged exercises, bicep curls, dumbbell shoulder presses, back extensions. You can even do neck strengthening exercises. The point is to select exercises that target your weakness. So if you know you have a weak neck, for example, if your opponents pull down your neck all the time and you can't defend it, include some neck strengthening exercises. Make sure to always include one core exercise though. You can train your core every day because it recovers very fast. You can do a small circuit with supersets of 3 to 4 exercises at the end of each training session, and you do them for 10 to 12 repetitions for 3 to 4 sets and rest 1 to 2 minutes between. And here's some general knowledge regarding strength training. You need to include warm-up sets before you begin with your main lifts. Say you plan on doing 3x3 at 200 kilograms of deadlifts that day, then you have to include 4 to 5 warm-up sets prior to that. It depends on, you need to find a way that works for you, but an example could be 60 kilograms on the first set, then we have 800 kilograms, then 640, 480. The combinations are different, see what works for you, just include warm-up sets. And when you're new to strength training, you will be developing strength very rapidly, so you don't need to mess around with percentage-based systems for a while until you've developed a reliable 1 rep maximum. However, this doesn't mean that you should be reckless. Still listen to your body, know your limitations. So in this period I recommend you go by feel. But don't take it too far, remember, only do what you planned for that day. It's better to progress slowly and surely when it comes to strength training than rushing things and getting injured, of course. Once you've developed a reliable strength base, you know where you're at, you can use this chart to determine intensity and volume for different exercises. This chart is very popular in the strength training community and it's very general knowledge. It's not guaranteed to always hold truth because everyone is different, but just use it as an experiment. And with all of that said, here is an example of how a strength training session might look like. So as you can see, the compound exercise for this session is the back squat. So you would do a similar thing in the next training session, but do the bench press instead or do the deadlift instead. Every session has to have a focus on the compound exercise using one of the variations we talked about earlier. Either a squat variation, a pressing variation, or a deadlift variation. Now, as for the cardio, I would really recommend you to do this on a separate day to get the best of both worlds. If you really have to do it the same day as a strength training day, always do it at the end. However, realize the quality of the workout might not be as good and you'll risk overtraining. For cardio or endurance workouts, we should use this opportunity to make it as wrestling specific as possible. Once again, it's counterproductive to hit the exercise bikes or the treadmill because it's not similar to wrestling, it doesn't have good transferability. The goal is to improve endurance and the oxygen transportation to your muscles. Simply put, you achieve this by doing any movement repeatedly that gets your heart rate up. That could be sprawls, it could be shoots, it could be the agility ladder, it could be rowing, jumping ropes, battle ropes. It doesn't have to be running only or the exercise bike. The possibilities are endless. I would really recommend you to use your creativity here. Make a circuit of exercises that are beneficial to your game. Say you want to do cardio while simultaneously improving your shoot. Well, one station could be shoots with resistance bands straight for 40 seconds before going to the next, which might be the agility ladder because you want to improve your footwork, battle ropes to improve your hand fighting, and then you go to a throwing dummy to improve your hip thrust. You see, you're working on technique while doing cardio. The possibilities are endless, use your imagination here. The format of the circuit can be however you choose, just stick to the time span of wrestling. Don't do moderate low effort activity for an hour straight. Once again, it doesn't have any transferability to wrestling. Because you never wrestle in this pace, in this intensity. This is for marathon runners and triathletes only. You can instead do 2 to 4 minutes activity, 30 seconds rest, or 1 minute activity, 20 seconds rest. You can do Tabata intervals, try out different things and see what gives you the best results. Predetermine your total work time. It could be anywhere from 30 minutes to over an hour. You need to find that hot spot where you're improving without getting overtrained. Here is an example of how a circuit might look like. And remember, this is just an example, there are millions of other ways you can do it. And honestly, there are some wrestlers who don't even do cardio at all, because they get enough from wrestling practices themselves. Or perhaps they genetically have good endurance already, or maybe they're so technically superior and smooth that they're very conservative with their energy expenditure. They don't allow themselves to get tired. However, be very careful with this approach. There are many variables to this. It's also popular at many clubs that you hit a similar circuit at the end of every practice already, so be mindful about doing any additional cardio yourself. You will end all workouts by doing static stretching and foam rolling if you have the opportunity. This is mainly for injury prevention, but also developing flexibility and mobility. Before workouts you do dynamic stretching, and at the end of the workouts you do static stretching. Once again, you're putting your body in awkward positions to make it flexible, and therefore reducing the risk of injury. Flexibility by itself can be dangerous because you may hyperextend your joints. However, now we're combining flexibility with strength training, which means you get stronger joints as well, and that's a very good combination. If you're training for a competition and you're cutting weight, it's always recommended that you cut weight in a slow and controlled pace through diet. If you're working out that day, remember you still have to eat. Your body needs fuel and your body needs water. So just cut the junk food and divide your meals in smaller portions throughout the day and you'll be fine. Exercising while doing weight cutting through dehydration is a big no-no. I used to do this all the time when I was wrestling, thinking I was clever, and I would always pull a muscle before competition. Every action in the body that makes energy, produces force or repairs parts requires water. Water gives your muscles elasticity and flexibility that prevents pulls and tears. When your muscles are dehydrated, they are very susceptible to injury. So, how many sessions should you perform each week? This completely depends on many factors. First off, how many times are you wrestling every week? How well does your body recover? At what intensity and volume are you lifting in your sessions? I would really start off by implementing one strength workout every week and see what that does for me. And as time goes on and you're improving, you're getting stronger, you could do 2 and then do 3 sessions a week. And when you're in the off season, you could probably do even more. The key will be to always leave some energy in the bank so that you're fresh for your wrestling practices. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you got some new ideas or insights that you could implement from now on, and good luck with your training.